Welcome to Action Research Lesson 4. So for this lesson, we are going to develop specific objectives for your research. So the contents of this lesson, we are going to cover the definition of research objectives, why objectives are important in research, how to write research objectives, and what to remember when writing research objectives, and examples of research objectives. So research objectives, these are the outcomes that you aim to achieve by conducting research. So the purpose of research objectives is to drive the research project, including data collection, analysis, and conclusions. Research objectives also help you to narrow down or narrow in on the focus of your research and key variables, guiding you through the research process. So in other words, some people would like to say objectives are called aims. Some would like to say targets. Some would like to say goals or ends. So structurally, the objectives are seen as small particles which constitute your research problem. So it's like you break your research into small pieces, and then you focus on each piece as an objective of your research. So when these pieces are gathered together now, they give you the answers to your research problems. So why objectives are important in research? So they're important because they help you to focus the study, like I said, to narrow down to essentials or things that are important to you. Then to avoid the collection of data which are not strictly necessary for understanding and solving the problems which you have mentioned. To organize the study in a clearly defined parts or phases. Then to facilitate the development of the research methodology, which will help to orient how you're going to collect the data, the way you're going to collect data, analysis, interpretation, and utilization of data. So without research objectives, it's very hard to plan your research methodology because it will not be clear what you want to collect data on. So that's why it's important to have your research questions and your objectives defined from the beginning of the research before you proceed. Then how do you write research objectives? So another key step to writing a strong research objective is to use the SMART methods or the SMART format. So using this format can make your objectives clearer and easier to understand, which can make you more likely to achieve them. Make sure your objectives meet these criteria of SMART. S means specific, so be specific about your desired outcomes or the things that you are looking for. So objectives should be clearly written and leave no room for confusion. So this can help you keep them narrow and focused. M is for measurable. Making your objectives measurable is essential to achieving them. So you can create metrics to measure your progress towards achieving your objectives, or you can find standardized data collection instruments which can help you measure your objectives. For example, maybe you are doing a study which is focused on stress levels of people with chronic condition. So in order to measure their stress levels, you can make an objective like to determine their stress levels using a standardized stress scale called the maybe the stress depression scale made by someone else. When you do literature search, you will find some of the scales which focus on what you are interested in. Then if you are a teacher now, maybe you are dealing with you want to see how the students read or their reading pace, whether it's slow or faster. You can try to look in literature. You'll find some standardized measurement tools to measure the pace of reading for students. So this, you can either create your own or you can find the ones which are created by others in literature. That's how you can measure your objectives. So achievable, be sure to create objectives that you can realistically achieve to help you avoid getting overwhelmed by unrealistic expectations. So make sure you have the resources and the budget to accomplish your objectives, and also make sure it's within the area where you are available. don't overfetch areas where you cannot go. So you have to be within the area where you can collect data. Relevant are, make sure your objectives are relevant to your research and your overall goals. So always make sure that you stick to your problem, research problem. Don't deviate or divert yourself from the attention of your problem. So make sure you're always focused on your problem. This can help you stay motivated and on track throughout your research project. Time-based, you can establish deadlines to help you keep your research on time, and then you can set a major deadline for your entire project as well as smaller deadlines for each objective. So let's say you have like 5 objectives for your research, so you can put a timeline like, okay, for this objective I will collect data on it for the first 2 weeks. The second 2 weeks I move to the second objective, the other 2 weeks third objective, and so forth. So you can do that as an example. Then when you are formulating objectives, care must be taken specifically to state the objectives. Make sure they are clear, well written, and short, precise. Make objectives specific, significant, realistic, achievable. Ensure the objectives they flow logically, like you are starting with the easiest objective, moving to the complex objective. Not like you start with the complex objective, moving to the easier. So you have to make sure that your objectives are flowing logically from the statement of need to address the problem. Make the objectives fall within the range of your results, which are expected to be achieved within the limit of time, money, and human resources available. State the objectives as far as possible in terms which allow measurements or at least observation of their achievement. Then objectives should be hierarchical or chronological also. So also remember these things when creating your research objectives. Then remember once more that the objectives of a research just summarize what is to be achieved by the study, and they should be closely related to the statement of the problem. So whenever you are thinking of writing your research proposal or these research objectives, make sure you always refer to the problem statement which you wrote. So the format used in stating the objective is, you can have 2 objectives. The first one is the general objective, which states what the researcher expects to achieve by the study in general terms. So this, you are just broad, you're general, you're not specifying anything. And then for the specific objective, now you are trying to specify things and you are now deviating away from being broad. So these are smaller or logically connected parts of the general objective. So they are the specific aspects of the topic that we want to study within the framework of our study. So specific objectives should systematically address the various aspects of the problem and the key factors that are assumed to influence or cause the problem. So they should specify what we will do in our study, where and for what purpose. So you are reminded many times to ensure that the objective of your study cover the different aspects of the problem which you mentioned earlier, and its contributing factors in a coherent way and in a logical sequence. So you start from maybe the simplest way, maybe the simplest aspect of the problem, moving to the complex aspect of the problem. And then are clearly phrased in operational terms, specifying exactly what you are going to do, where and for what purpose. Realistic, like I said earlier, considering local conditions. Then use action verbs. So whenever you write your research objectives, always write them in action verbs. So action verbs, what are they? Examples of action verbs are those like to determine, to compare, to verify, to calculate, to describe, to establish. Those, so they are specific enough to be evaluated as earlier mentioned, and avoid the use of non-action verbs like to appreciate, to understand, or to study. Don't use those non-action verbs, only use the action verbs. So like I said, this slide is just summarizing what we said earlier. be concise when making research objectives. Keep number of objectives limited. You don't want to have like 20 objectives just for a small study. So you need something like good 5 or 6 objectives, which are straightforward, brief, and direct to the point, and also realistic. And then use action verbs, like I said, to assess, to determine, to calculate, to compare, to explain, to describe. You can use either of these. Okay, so let's look at examples of general research objectives. So these are just from different studies. So I'm just giving you an example. This study by Doman, Webb and Doman 2016, they have an example of a research objective like this study aims to find out. So you see they've used find out. This study aims to find out, or in other words, you can say to determine. This study aims to determine if there is a difference in quiz scores between students exposed to direct instruction and flipped classrooms. So this is an example of a research objective by these guys. And then there are other guys called Yemin, 2006. They were saying, this study seeks to examine the extent, range, and method of coral reef rehabilitation projects in 5 shallow reef areas adjacent to popular tourist destinations in the Philippines. Okay, this based on tourism. Then we got the other one is, this study aims to investigate species richness of mammal communities in the 5 protected areas over the past 20 years. Another one, this study aims to clarify demographic, epidemiological, clinical, and radiological features of 2019 COVID patients with other causes of pneumonia. So this is just showing you how an objective should look. It should be full, smart. Remember, we said specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and then time specific. Other examples of action research objectives. I know maybe you could have felt like these other research objectives were more out of the teaching scope, but then let's move to the teaching scope where you are comfortable, where you can relate to the terms. So some of the examples of the objectives for action research which you can write are these: to contribute towards whole school improvement, to effect improvement in the personal or professional practice of teachers, to provide opportunities for faculty to become involved in research projects, to raise community engagement and research profile of the faculty, to provide undergraduate students with opportunities for research. You see? So yeah, these are some of the references you can also go to and check. They have detailed information about how to write objectives. This tool, writing the title and abstract of a research paper, being concise, precise, and meticulous is the key. They've written something about objectives. And then Ratan, formulation of a research question. Their paper is how to formulate research question together with research objectives inside there. Then this Indeed career advice is also research objective summarization. So you can check these. And then don't forget to write the assignment for today, which is just to make your research objectives. So thank you for listening. Then we meet next time for lesson number 5.